All right, so let's get moving on this. All right, welcome back. We are COMP1011, that's Advanced OOP with Java in the summer 2022 semester at Georgian College, and it's week 10, part 1 of our broadcast and recording, and we'll try and kind of chop it up into a couple of equal parts this time around, so it's not so terrible. All right, so last week we talked about Json, how to serialize and deserialize objects. We included a tool called Json. We did it through Maven. We created instances of our Vector2D class for testing, and we kind of read from JSON data, which extended the idea of reading files from the system. So we were able to, the previous week we talked about how to read and write to files, and last week we were able to read and write JSON data to files. So that's kind of what we did. And we formed up our Vector2D class, which is a very simple class that we kind of made, that for testing purposes. Okay, so we're sitting at, again, this week, week 10. Next week, we're going to be talking about threads and concurrency, and I've been talking about setting up Android. That's really due next week. Assignment 3 and 4 are going to be released, and you'll have plenty of time. I promise you to do them because they won't be that difficult. Like I said, what I'm trying to do is build up all the things that you need to do in the in-class exercises, and then the assignments will be just like a culmination of everything that we're doing. In the last part, I just want to bring this up too. In the last part, we will be doing a few weeks or a couple weeks of Android development, which will just be putting together Android with Java. And next semester, if you do have me or if you have somebody else for Android development, then you'll be actually moving from Java to Kotlin, which is, in my opinion, a better language for Android development. It's made by JetBrains for Android, and it's kind of cool. It includes a lot of the things that are missing from Java that we all want, and it's kind of a more slender language in many ways. So that is something we're going to talk about next semester, if you're with me. If not, then you'll be getting the intro to Android with Java starting off next week when we do the install, finally. All right, let's talk about what we're doing this week. So this week we're talking about an API. You guys know what an API is, but I'll go over it again. At least you should know. ICE9, again, no lab report. I've been kind of removing this because of my, I've got a bit of a backlog on my end, and I want to make sure that you guys, it's easy for you to submit your in-class exercise to get maximum marks, which what I've been doing is I'm giving you whatever I can as soon as I see you submit something, and if it meets requirements, you just get max marks, which is what I've been doing, which is, I think, good for you. There are some people I have to mention still that do not complete their in-class exercises or do not submit them, and I can't provide marks for stuff that I don't get. So if nothing is provided, I can't really give you anything. But if you do give me stuff, then I totally give you as many marks as I can, usually full. So that is what we're doing this week. We're talking about a tool called Postman today too, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever used Postman. Yes, no? I don't know. This is a question for you guys. If you haven't, then, and I'm guessing the answer is no, then we'll talk about how to download it, how to use it, why is it used, and why is it really helpful. Because I think this is an important tool for us when we use a web API, which is what we're going to be doing. When I talk about APIs today, I'm talking about a web API. Okay, so that's when I say, what is an API? Sure. And when we connect to it, we're going to use, normally we use GET and POST requests for APIs. For us, it's going to be largely GET requests that we're going to be doing because we're not really going to write anything through the API at this point in time. So what I want to do today is I want to load data from an API using JSON, and we'll use the OMDB, the open source movie database. And then we will create instances of our custom class, which is going to be, in our case, our movie class from JSON data. And then we're going to create a UI to work with the JSON data. Again, I'm not sure if we'll get all of this done today. And the reason why is because there's a lot to do and not a lot of time. This right here, loading the data, creating our custom class and all that stuff is going to take a long time. All right, because there's a brand new class we're going to have to make. And there's a lot of little pieces to what we're doing today. This class today is a key class for your assignment 3-4, right, coming up. And the reason for this is it'll give you all the things you need for the most part to read JSON data and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's an important one. You know, I'm glad that you guys are here, the people that are here, but it's important for us to be able to do this because this is kind of like almost like a foundational class today to help you with everything you need to do. All right, let's talk about what an API is. And I put this little document here together. It's not very many, you know, slides. I don't like too many slides, like you know, right? So really what it stands for is an application programming interface, which you know. That doesn't really tell you much, but really what it does is it creates something called, or provides something called URI endpoints. And really they're just HTML addresses, right, that deliver data and usually in JSON format. That's kind of my little simplification for you, okay? They often require an API key, although some are free, and they don't require API keys. We talked about that last week where you can find free ones. And usually the way applications communicate with a web API, API key is authentication. Kind of, I would say it's instead of API key being authentication, it's almost like maybe it is. I would say it's the closest thing to authentication. It's not really a login, but it's more like an identity. So it tells you you have to sign up for an API key. Now they can't verify that it's the same user because you guys, an example today, you can use my API key and it should be just fine, right? So does an API key protect you from, you know, or the API itself? No, not really. But it does provide some kind of identity, an identifier for who, you know, who is associated with this request. A lot of times we want an API key or some kind of authentication structure. If we're making our own API, and you'll have a chance to make your own API, if I'm not wrong, probably next semester or the semester after. I'm not sure, depending on which program you're part of. Have you guys taken COMP1011 yet? That's, I think it's Advanced Web. If you haven't, then you probably won't be, yeah, so that's coming up. So that's you making your own Node.js server and all that kind of stuff. So when you make your own Node server, then you'll be making your own API. You can actually do that with your .NET as well. So if you're taking .NET, you know, of course, that kind of creates your own API. You can make an API with any kind of backend, PHP, .NET, or Node, which is becoming quickly the most popular way of doing it, okay? So you have this backend, this API, and what we want to do is we want to make a request through the web server, right? And the API endpoint is going to be some kind of URL, like an address, right? It's going to go through the web server. It's going to go to the database. The web server is going to fetch data from the database and return that data through the web server, through the API again, and across the internet to your application. That's typically the workflow. So what you're doing is you're making a request all the way through, and you're going to get a response all the way through. And this is kind of called a round trip, okay? Every time you make a request, it goes all the way back and all the way to the front. And a lot of times your web API, notice the web server here, an API, your web API, which is kind of exposed on the internet, it needs some kind of protection, like I said. And a lot of times we use some kind of authentication mechanism or an identity at least, which is kind of what authentication is. Authentication is like, this is who I am, right? And authorization is, this is what I can do, right? So that's two parts of the security mechanism. But an API key is almost like I'm identifying who is making the request or who created it potentially. But there's no guarantee, and you'll see this today, there's no guarantee that the API key is being used by the owner. It might be shared by the owner, right? But it may not be used by the owner. And that a lot of times what I like to do when I make my own API, web API, is create my own authentication mechanism, usually through some kind of JSON web token. For now, that's not what we're talking about. Today, we're just talking about how to access a web API that's available to us. And we're not going to use any authentication beyond the API key, which I've already created, but I'll tell you how to do it for yourself if you're interested. All right, so then once we get the API, we need to make a request, and typically we want to do it through some kind of tool. Let's review an API that already is there. So remember last time we talked about the open source movie database, right? And if you go omdbapi.com, that is the open source movie database API. I'll put that in the chat for everybody. And I'll also put it in the chat on YouTube. So that's the one we're going to be using. So what this does is if you want to get your own API, it's really simple. You don't even have to log in or identify yourself too much. In this case, it's very, very open source. If you go here to API key, all you need to do is to generate an API key is you need to put in an email address, right? And if you go free, you'd identify your email, your first name and your last name, and then how you're going to use it. I've already done this process, and basically what I've done is I've just said for educational use only, because that's what it is, right? And that's all you need to do to get your API key for OMDB. Okay, so if you want to, you can do it, or if you don't want to do it, you can use mine for today, because again, it's just for educational purposes. We're not going to do a crazy amount of calls, but notice it has 1,000 kind of calls to the API, if you will, or requests, 1,000 requests daily and responses. It's not a lot. So if you're actually making use of it for real, you probably want to pay for it through Patreon. And Patreon will, you pay a small amount and you get more. It's kind of, they're trying to make it so that you give them something from the work that they put together. And I think it's worth it if you're going to use something like this on a regular basis. We're not going to. We're going to just, play with it today, maybe, and next week. All right, so that's kind of what it is. That's how you get your API. How do I use it after I got it? So let me give you my API key, and I will paste it inside of the chat for you so you can have it if you want to use it, or if you want to use your own, you can certainly use your own. So, but this is mine. I just generated this today. Here it is, right? And I'll put that in on YouTube for those people who are watching on YouTube as well. So if you want to follow along, those are the people that are live on YouTube. All right, so that's my API key. And so what you do is, the way you make the call is you go OMDB API, and then slash, and then question mark, API key, and then equals to, you put your API key in there, which is this one. And then if you just press enter, you should get something that looks like this, right? And it says response false, which means there's nothing that we've searched for. And this is a piece of data that we're getting from the web API that we're accessing. Now, in order for us to make a proper request, take a look at the requirements here. So the requirements are down here. It says how to use it. You put your API key, and then you have an ampersand, and then followed by one of these, items. So I want to put in a proper IMDb ID. It starts with TT something something, right? And then or T is the movie title, right? Again, these are all optional. Nothing is required here if you wanted to take a look at all this stuff. Type, you can search by type, you can search by year, you can search by plot, you can search by a bunch of stuff. And also, you can also do by search. And you put, instead of T, you put S. And we'll talk about this in a second. Okay, so those are the requirements. But it's really tough to look at something like this, because if I do something like, okay, well, I want to put my API key in here, and so this is my API key, and let's do something like, I want to search for Dune, like this, right? And so you can see it kind of looks ugly, and it pulls out all the stuff that's related to Dune in a thing that looks like this. So kind of hard to look at and everything else. And this is where I go into the tool that I want you to download right now to help us take a look at this data instead of looking at a bunch of what looks like garbage to us, right? Let's pull down a tool called Postman. Okay, so please go to Postman download. And when you download Postman, you can also, there is a plugin for your browser as well. I prefer the download version. If you're using a Mac, you can also pull down the Mac version for the Intel chips or for Apple chips out there. It's up to you. Okay. Or it's also compatible with Linux. So it's one of these tools right here. So very popular tool. I would say it's a kind of a standard in terms of how we use it. So please pull down the version that best suits you. So this is the link that I want you to go to. I'll put that in the chat for you guys. Okay. So this is the one I want you to go to right now. And as soon as we start off with this, okay, I want you to think about this now for a second. We get a tool that looks like this, okay? And what I want you to do as soon as you pull down, the download isn't very, very long, and most of you should have it in short order. If you notice here, there is an upgrade button. Please don't choose this. This is if you want to buy a version of Postman that is not free. It's not required for you guys to do this at all. So that is the tool. What we want to do here is I want to go to workspaces and create a workspace. I've called our workspace COMP1011, and I'm just going to rename it. You can always rename your workspace to whatever you want. So this is M2022. And you can also go here to workspace settings and decide whether you want to show it as public or whatever. I can always delete my workspace. It says delete workspace here. And I can do that by deciding what to do if I want to delete my workspace. I'm not going to do that here though. You can see that here's my workspace. And the reason why you want a workspace is you can divide, kind of your searches amongst the stuff that you want to do. And I'm just going to delete some of these things because I don't need them. And we're going to make our new OMDB calls by myself. I was just doing that when we were searching. So this is what it would look like. You make a new workspace, okay? And once you've done that, we can start with a new request. So are you with me? Have you downloaded Postman and have you created your own workspace called COMP1011? You want to make it public. If you have, let me know you have in the chat, or you can put a thumbs up and I'm good to go. Okay, got Giovanni, thank you. Anyone else? Are you guys all good? Is it too slow to download or install? How's it going? I'd like to try and move on, but I don't want to do that without you, because then I'll do something and then you'll be like upset at me. You're like, go back. And I can't, there's nothing to share on one thing I can't do is I can't share this on GitHub yet, right? Because nothing to share. How about the rest of you? How about Bradley and Dia and Kuhen and Sarah? Maybe I missed you guys, and Shahil. Yeah. Hopefully you're with me at this point. Free account. Yeah. You're good so far, Bradley. Thank you. Yeah, everything is free. You don't pay for anything here. All right, so now once you've downloaded the tool, then what you want to do is you want to make a new request. So instead of you putting the request up here like this, right, we can actually take this request, and the request I made is I put my API key. Here it is. Here's the request I made, right? I took that request that I put inside of, I'm going to also share that with people who are watching online. So this is kind of the API call that I made, and I'm going to pile it into Postman now. So if you go to Postman and if you go to where it says get request, and if I put my URL in there, it fills in the parameters. Take a look. Here it fills in an API key and a parameter for S. Remember that if I was to go back to this, S means search. It's required by default. That is definitely required. And if you notice that if I did that with Postman here, you can see that the search term is Dune. Okay, so Dune is the movie, and my API key is this. You can actually change it for you. If I click send, then it will give me a much more organized looking list of information from the API, the OMDB. And immediately what we get is data, okay, which is pretty cool. So this is one thing we can do, and we're going to use this data. So why is this useful? Well, it gives us a search array. That's what it gives us. So that's what it returns. And the search array is an array of objects. Those are JSON objects. Each JSON object includes a title, year, IMDb ID, type, and poster. If I click on any one of the posters here, you can see that, let me go back to the request, this one. If I click on one of the posters, if I copy it and paste it in here, you can actually see that we'll get potentially, if I actually can put in the request properly, sorry, you'll see that this is the poster for Dune. So that is the actual image, right? That we can pull down for free. So that's the poster for Dune. And that is being saved right in this request. So with each search result, these are the search results, each one of these, and they all come with little posters, potentially, right? And there's other versions of Dune. Dune 2000, the type is a series. Children of Dune, the type is a series, right? Dune Drifter, a movie, who knows what that is, Planet Dune, and a bunch of other ones, okay? You can see that there are 74 results, that have been returned, right? And most of them are being shown right here. Yeah, these are the results. And notice it says total results, and then we get a response property that says true, all right? So these are the things that we have here. And again, are you with me? Were you able to get this kind of response when you did this, when you made the first kind of like, when you made your first request? So your first request is here. And notice when I go to my, the request properties for this one, then I get a couple of things, right? In our parameters, if we click on parameters, or you can kind of look at them and you can see that this is the API, and then here is the search term. Yes? Hopefully you guys did. So this is interesting. So this is one way of getting data. And let's make another response. Let's make another request. So notice that Postman keeps track of all your requests here on the left. So this is kind of a list of requests that you can do. You can remove them too if you don't want them. Okay, totally true. You can get, kind of get rid of them. But what we want to do is make another one. So let's see if we can use a different kind of request. So one type is we search for the movie. The other one is, what if I search by title? So I can make a general search term, and it returns multiple movies by that title. Okay, or I can search by title, by T. Let's do that. So if I do that, and if I go back to this, so I want to change this parameter to type T, right? And if I just go Dune, like so, and if I click send, that's a different response. I get different kinds of data. Take a look. I get the title, which is Dune, the year it was made, which is 2021, what its rating is, release date, the runtime, genre, director, writer, actors, plot, kind of a short plot, if you will. If you want to get a long plot, you can just go plot, and then you can put in full as an option. And if you did that and click send, you can see now that we get a full plot of what the movie's about, right? Language, country, awards, poster, ratings here as an example, as well as Metascore, IMDb rating, IMDb votes, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay? So really great in terms of what they give you from this API. And that's if I use T for the title. I can search by title. Now, it also gives you the IMDb ID, which is a way of, kind of searching for a specific movie that you want. All right. So if I have the IMDb ID, instead of using T for title and plot, let's not use plot. Right. So let's uncheck this altogether. And let's use, I for ID and replace Dune with that specific IMDb kind of ID. And if I click this and click send, then again, we get the same data. We get the exact same data, right? But now it's specifically for this movie. We're not searching for more than one response. We're not searching by title. We're searching by IMDb ID. So those are the three ways we're going to look at these pieces of data today, okay? So why am I looking at this? And you can see that these are all the requests I just made, right? to the API. What are your thoughts, guys? How are you doing with this in terms of requests? Did your request come out the same way? And the reason why I'm presenting this to you, like so, is for a couple of reasons, right? There's a couple of reasons here. One of them is we want to be able to identify properties. So what I want to do now with you is I want to create a brand new project, ICE9, and I want to make a brand new movie class. And that movie class for ICE9 is something that we're going to build upon to this week and next week. Okay, that's kind of something that I want to work on with you. But we have some almost like some properties. So remember, what we want to do is this: we want to deserialize the JSON data. So this is the JSON data we're getting from the API, the web API that we're accessing, which is OMDB API. This is the serialized data, and we want to deserialize it and create a brand new class object for the movie that we want to display in a UI. Okay, that's what we want to do. Okay, so that is what I want to do. Let's start with our project structure. Okay, so hopefully you guys are all with me, and you're going to do this with me together. So again, let's bring up IntelliJ. And what I want to do is I want to create a brand new project. Let's do that. And you can see that it's going to be called the same thing that we always call it. So we're going to say, again, COMP1011 in the summer 2022, and it's going to be ICE9, right? Again, we're using Java as a language. Our group, which is our package, is going to be ca.georgian college, right? And we're going to switch this. I like to use at least API 18. Notice my API went up to 18.02. Today it was updated. You may also need, it may ask you to update yours. It doesn't really matter. As long as it's 18 or higher, you're pretty good to follow along with this recording, okay? So that's kind of where we want to go with this one. Okay, so then as soon as I've got this, I'm going to click next. And just like before, I'm just going to make my project. It's going to create a template for us with some dummy data. And we've done this in the past many times now. You guys should be very comfortable doing what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to go through and delete any of the data we don't need, which is these 3 files. Go through, delete them, please, and click on delete. Let's do that first. So there we are. It says delete anyway. Goodbye. And then what we want to do is we want to go back and look at a couple of different files, okay, for us. And I'm going to potentially give them to you in different ways, okay? So one of them is under this, we have a bunch of, we have a bunch of in-class exercises we've been doing, okay? A lot of them. Last week we did ICE8. Let's start from there. So we'll go into ICE8 and we'll grab some of the things from ICE8 because we're going to need JSON and a bunch of other stuff in here. So this is where we're going to start first. So source, we're going to go to main, and we're going to go to resources. So this is the stuff that we need, okay? We need from resources the app CSS and the icon, just those 2. So I don't need the file chooser because we're not going to use the file chooser today. So copy those and put them inside of, right click and paste inside of there. It's going to ask you to accept it. I will, and add it to GitHub. Yay. Okay, so app, CSS, and icon PNG, those are good. Next, what I want to do is I want to go into source, main, Java, and kind of drill down until you get to all this. I want the, well, my DB manager right now I'm not going to use because I'm not going to use a database for today. So for now, we're not going to pick this. I'm also not going to choose file chooser controller or my file dialog type. I'm not going to choose that. Okay, I will choose the main.java. I will choose the utility file. Those 2 things I'm gonna need. All right, but the file chooser controller and the file dialog type and the DB manager, I really don't need this stuff right now. because at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not going to do any database stuff today. All right, so I'm just going to grab this main and util Java, copy it, and I'm going to go back into here. I'm going to right click and paste it in. So it's going to say, hey, do you want it? Yes, I do. These are the ones I want. Awesome. So those main and utility. The other pieces I want are from another in-class exercise, and hopefully you have this one. I'm going to go back a couple of steps here. So I'm going to go to just a few weeks ago. So remember that ICE, we did in ICE 5 and ICE 6, we had a switcher. So if I go back to my source in ICE 5, I'm looking at ICE 5 now, source main, and if I go to Java, and if I look inside of there, I have a scene manager, right? The scene manager I definitely want. If you don't have the scene manager for whatever reason, I don't think I can pull it into, that's one thing I can't do with as much with, I can't do that with web, our lovely conferencing tool, right? So, which is unfortunate because, you know, I like to be able to pull things across, you know, kind of thing into WebEx. Let's see if there's another way of sharing a file, share multimedia. And I'm wondering if I can give you files in here as well. I'm not sure if you guys know how to do that. I don't really use this thing. Share content, share web browser, share multimedia. Let's see what that is. Oh, there's the URL. So it's just a URL. I don't think I can give it to you this way. But you can, anyways, you should have it if you've been following along. If not, I will show it to you in a second anyway. So share content. And oh yeah, there is a file. Okay, I can share a file. Let's see if I can drag and drop my here we go, my scene manager in here. No, I cannot, but it's asking me for where I want to go, and maybe I'll go to my desktop. One sec. I think I can be able to give it to you. One sec. I won't be able to do for the guys that are watching online, but at least for the people that are here with WebEx, I should be able to give it to you no problem here, it looks like. So just going to give you that file as a starter. And it is called Scene Manager. I wonder if you got it. And let's just share my screen. There. I'm not sure. Did you guys get the file by any chance? Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. Yes? No? I can't tell unless you tell me. No. Okay, that's not good. It said to share file. I shared it, man. I swear. I went to share and I shared content and I shared a file with you. I guess it's just not as easy. Anyways, I'll show it to you anyway when I include it. You guys should have it from a previous version. If you go to ICE, actually I can give it to you online. One thing we have is everything is online for us. So the other way to get this is through GitHub. So if you go to github.com and if you look at Georgian College, then you're going to see a set of repositories. One of them was ICE 5, and ICE 5 has this file. Oops, I went to the wrong one. This file right here, which is my scene manager, this file right here. And I'm going to give you this link. And actually that I can do online. So that's the link for scene manager. And that's the link for people who are watching on YouTube. That's the one. So this file here is what we want to load. And scene manager, what it does is it's a singleton, and it allows us to switch scenes because we're going to do that. We're going to need to do that as well. So that's something that I'm going to do. So again, up here, I want to get that scene manager and I want to pop it in. So I'm just going to copy this one and go to my class here and paste it in. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to add that in. There's scene manager. Okay, so scene manager main and utility. We want to make a couple of fxml files at this point. All right, so one of them is going to be for my my view. Okay, so we're going to have one that we're going to use, to take a look at the search results. Okay, because I'm going to be able to search. What I want to do is I want to search the database, and so I'm going to have a search view, okay, or a results view, or whatever you want to call it. Let's make it. We'll call it search view. So make a brand new fxml file, and we'll call it search-view.fxml. Okay, so that's what we want there, a search view. And normally what we need for a search view, we need a search view controller. Let's make a brand new controller in here, which is just an empty Java class that we're going to call the search view controller. Okay, so the controller class here. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And then in the search view fxml file, we're going to call the search view controller. And there we are. So there's the search view controller. Let's also make another fxml file, just as a stub right now. These are just stubs. I want to make another one, and it's going to be the details view. So again, right-click, new fxml file. We'll call this the details-view.fxml. Details view fxml, and we'll click add. And then we need a details view controller. Let's add a new Java class, which we'll call the details view controller. And that details view controller is something that we want to connect to with our details view.fxml. Okay, there we go. So we've connected it. It's empty right now. When we start our application, I want to start it with my, in main, I don't want to start it with my file chooser, but rather I want to start it with my search view fxml, search-view fxml. Okay, that's where I'm going to start things off. I'm still going to use the icon that I had before. I'm still going to set the title to something, but it's going to be something like, I want to read a movie from a database, that kind of thing. That's what I want to do with this. Let's just call it something like reading from OMDB API. So reading, I'll say reading from OMDB API. Okay, that's what this title is all about today. Save. And so that is so far so good. Now the other things we need to do is always we want to modify a couple of things. Our POM XML, which is going to add any kind of requirements. And one of them is we need to use Json again, right? So again, I'm just going to go into a file that has that information from last week, where we're talking about ICE 8. And there's many ways to get this. And I'm going to look at POM XML and press edit here. And then from here, I'm just going to grab, both dependencies, because in the future, I may elect to connect with and store some selections in our database. Okay. For now, I'm not, but just to prepare, I'm just going to grab these two dependencies here. I'm going to grab these two dependencies, copy them, right? And I'm going to put them inside of our POM XML at the bottom. Right now, we don't need it, the MySQL stuff, and I don't even have a DB manager in, but I'm just going to put it in so we have it in. Save. And we're going to go to Maven and refresh. This is going to refresh and download any requirements you need for the project. Okay, so again, this is all the same stuff that we've done before, nothing new so far. Okay. And of course, we also want to modify our module info Java, and we need a couple of requirements as well as a modification to the opens directive over here. And so what we're going to do, we don't need this anymore, but we can take a look at if I go to source from last week, main Java, we have our module info Java. We can also look at that and edit it in some kind of editor. And the only thing we want to do, we want to grab requires SQL for now, and this one. Again, we don't really require SQL, but we may in the future. And the other one is we want to add com.google.json to be able to read our package. which is what the comma is for. So that's what we want to add in there. So let's just make sure that we can do that. So I'm going to grab this, copy it, and we should be able to paste it in there, no problem, and save. Now this is a good starting point, and before we move, we want to go to main, and I want to click on play to make sure that our application runs, and so we don't get confused if it doesn't. All right, cool. So it says it doesn't know anything about vector 2D. Why? In the utility object here, we have a configure vector 2D spinner, but our utility also requires a vector 2D because we have a vector 2D distance that's here. Two options that we can use. One is we can certainly just remove this reference, and if I look down here, you can see that vector 2D is a thing. I can also include vector 2D here in the from before to take care of this issue. I'm not going to need it today, or we can just remove the utility. My thinking is, just to make it simple, we may create our own utility or a new utility class in the future, but for now, we don't need to draw anything or whatever. So maybe adding the utility here was a little bit premature. Let's just remove it. So we'll just delete it. So we can remove that file, utility, and we don't need it for anything right now. We should be able to run our application, and it should run with an empty UI, which looks like this. Okay, good. So far, so good. So I've kind of slimmed down even more. I wanted to slim this down because we have other things to do today, and so far, so good. So now let's put this up on GitHub finally. So I'm going to go and do a git init, a git add dot, a git commit -m, and we'll say added project files for ICE9, and then git push. And what did I do wrong? Git add dot. I said git commit -m, added project files. Oh yeah, for ICE9. But we don't have, sorry, what we didn't do is we don't have a remote repository. I'll be okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. And I want to go out here and make one. So I'm just going to go to Georgian College, and we're going to make a brand new repository. We're going to make a new one. We're going to call this COMP1011 in the summer of 2022, and it is going to be ICE9. We'll make it public, and press create repository, and it's going to give us steering directions as we've seen before, which these ones, we only need the last 3 lines of code here. I'm just going to copy them, go back to IntelliJ, right click and paste them. And if I did everything properly this time, it should just work. Yes, awesome. And then of course, we're going to see my insane changes. Let's take a look. There we go. Okay, these are the things we did. Wow. All right, so that is everything that we do when we start things off as normal. And, I think we're kind of on our way to get moving on this one. One other thing I like to do always is when we launch our scene builder, and we won't do it yet. Again, we'll see if we get to that today. Just going to close off any things we don't need. What I want to do with ICE9 today is focus on reading from OMDB and what's required. So we're going to use Postman to help us, okay? So our movie that I want to make is this. Okay, this is what I want to make. I want to make movies that have a title, that have a year, rated, released, and so on. Okay, so that's what I want to do. Let's make a brand new model class, which is going to be called movie. So right click here, and we're going to add a new Java class, which we're going to call movie, and press enter. So movie is going to have to mirror the stuff we've done in our that was stuff we've done before. Okay, so one thing to note is we've learned a couple of things. Okay, when I make some, I'm going to call them private instance members, right? And when we make instance members that are named funny, like I named them in funny ways, right? Like M_, Json doesn't like it. And so what we need to do is we need to serialize our name. Okay, serialize our name. And we can use that with Json. So example, here are some data members that I can think of. A private string object that is called m_title. That is definitely something we need. But that will not compute with JSON data, right? Or JSON, right? So what we need to do is we want to say at serialized name, all right? We have one at serialized name, and we want to call this thing title. So the proper name, it should match, remember, I'm pressing Alt-Enter here, it should match the name that we're going to use for, that's inside of our, kind of our database. So if you look here at Postman, title should match exactly the case that we're using. When we use JSON, it's going to look for this name inside of our movie, right? And what does it say here? Why does it say, as there's an error? It says that remove, we don't need the semicolon. There we go. That's what it's complaining about. All right, so that's the first thing. Next, so if I was to go along with this idea, let's kind of create the rest of them. So I'm going to make a private string that is m_year, a private string, I'm just going to make them all for a second, which is m_, I think it's called rated, a private string that is m_released. Let's check. Rated, released, runtime, genre, and directory. Private string m_runtime, a private string m_genre, a private string m_director, and writer actors plot. So private string m_writers, private string m_actors, a private string m_plot. So far, okay? Now we don't need all of them. That's the great thing about this. If we're using JSON, we don't need ratings, like all the different where the ratings come from. We do need rated, but we don't need ratings. I'm not going to definitely show you where all the ratings come from. It's interesting information, but I got to draw the line somewhere. I don't care about awards too much right now, or country or language. I do care about plot, and I do care about poster, and I do care about IMDb ID, those types. Okay, those things right there. Type is interesting. Okay, type is interesting, movie. But I think what I care so much more about is movie would help us filter things. So again, what we care about is what I care about, and it's up to you what you want. You can put all of them if you want. I'm just going to put in poster, IMDb ID. So let's do that. So I'll say private string m_poster, private string m_IMDb ID, like so, and maybe a private string m_type, maybe. And I don't know if I want to do that right now. And so you can see that there are a lot of different things. There's also a response, which we don't need right now. Response tells us that there is a positive response to what we've kind of looked up here in this case, right? But we need to serialize all these. So we're going to just go serialize, serialize, serialize. Serialized name would be year. Okay, this is where it takes time to do. Serialized name would be rated. What is the rating? Like, for example, rated R or rated PG-13. This is released. Runtime. And make sure it's spelt right. Runtime, yeah, it looks right. Genre, just capped, right? And we can make it do, we can kind of use whatever name we want, like we saw before. Director, writers, actors, plot. We want to include that. Poster, IMDb ID, and this has to be spelled correctly, especially here, IMDb, all lowercase ID, and then type, like is it a movie or a show? Because IMDb or OMDB has different types you can have as well. So type. There we go. So those are all of our private instance members. Okay, so that's what we've done there. We want to also include getters and setters, and that is going to prove to be a bit of a issue. And I also want a couple of constructor functions as well. Okay, so let's make the getters and setters first. So I'm going to right click anywhere and go to generate, and then it says getter and setter. Okay, take a look at that, getter and setter, and I'm going to click on there, and you see that there's getters and setters for everything. I'm going to click all of them and just highlight them all. Okay, so the setter template, it says IntelliJ default, and the getter template is IntelliJ default. What about if I wanted to make my own? Take a look. You can actually make your own template if you want here, right? So it says basically your field name, you know, and stuff like this. And you can set it up so that it returns the field name, whatever it is here. And so that is the IntelliJ default. I could add my own. So, and you can see that this part would stay the same. Field record component and field name, right? I want to have the field name, but I'm taking my field name and removing the M underscore and capitalizing it, right? So it says the name itself is string util capitalized with Java Bean convention. I'm going to sanitize the Java identifier, and I want to use my helper. I'm going to take the field as an example, my get property name, field, and project. And if we're careful, we can make our own if we really want to. I'm just pointing it out because people have asked, what do we have to keep on, you know, accepting stuff? There's some really great things you can do here if you spend some time and make this, and maybe later on this semester, if we have time, I'll go through this with you and make our own, okay? And there's also records style, right? So the record style, if I want to make records or whichever one I want, okay? Here, I'm just going to choose IntelliJ default and press OK, which is going to create a bit of a mess for me, right? Because I have all of these. I care about just doing this. So get title, set title, and I want to use title here. So there's a bit of renaming, unfortunately, but it does save us some time. Set year, get year, right? And I'm doing this for all of them. Some people also, when they make a model class, make it all public. I'm not really, I like to follow the conventions of object-oriented programming, which is private instance members, public properties, right? So it's not that big of a deal. It won't take that long just to do my renaming manually, you know, although there are quite a few methods or quite a few fields that I have to go through, you know, and there's a chance that they'll be named wrong, but you know, I mean, again, just by following proper, you know, one at a time thing, we can get them done in some reasonable time frame. Okay, and I haven't really found a quicker way to do this without modifying that file, which is just a template that we would be using other than the built-in template that we have. All right, so I mean, if we're doing this a lot, like we're making a lot of classes, and we haven't really done that this semester. We've made a couple of classes, but not many. Then yeah, that would make sense. It would save us some time. But for now, we can just, you know, just go in there and manually change some stuff, and it's not terrible. Otherwise, you'd have to write it by hand, and it would take even longer. glad that, I'm glad that the tool, to be honest with you, even exists. Back when we first started writing classes, there was nothing that helped us with anything. We have to write everything by hand. There was no code hinting or code coloring, and they've come a long way in terms of creating tools for us that can work out, right? So I think this is pretty cool in terms of everything that we have to do, which still is a time saver because it kind of cancels out some of the finger typing issues we could make by accident. Okay, so this is one. So IMDb ID, if I'm going to get IMDb ID like this, I don't know. I want to make it caps IMDb ID, right? And I might even go for as far as IMDb underscore ID. I think I might do that for my getter because this makes more sense to me. It speaks to me more than the other stuff, right? So that's just me. And I'll probably do the same thing with my setter, IMDb underscore ID, and then just call this IMDb ID. And type, of course, not that difficult. Get type, that's pretty good. That's just type. And I'm done, I think, yeah. So those are our getters and setters. And I'm just going to go and do a look-see through them all just to make sure that they look correct and do a kind of a visual. I'm going to be doing a visual inspection just to make sure that this is all good to go. I think they look good to me. I'm not seeing any issues. But what I do want is I want my properties to be below my I want them to appear below my instance members. So I'm going to cut them out here, and I'm going to put them below my instance members because that's how I like them to be set up. I mean, again, if you put them above, I mean, it doesn't really matter to me. But to me, this is how I set them up. So I call these getters and setters, or mutators and accessors, which is what they're officially called. All right, so that's kind of where we have them, private instance members. And then this is pretty cool, right? We have all of these. And what we can also do is we can right click and we can also generate a constructor. I can click select none. So we have a default constructor function. I'm going to put my constructors like way at the bottom. So below my properties, my getters and setters, or public properties, sometimes people call them. So these are constructors, right? There it is. There's that empty constructor. So I want to have the ability for me to make an empty constructor. And I'm going to fill this in a second. As well as I want right click, and I'm going to go to generate. And I also want to generate another constructor, which is going to have all of these in there as well. Again, from a generation perspective, if I click OK, it just creates my constructor function. There it is. Doesn't give me an option for a template for this one. What I want to do with it is I want to rename all of these. So refactor rename to title, refactor rename. So shift F6 to year. So shift F6 to rated, shift F6, released, shift F6, runtime, shift F6 to genre, and keep going. Ah. going to keep doing it until I'm done. Again, a little bit tedious, but we are trying to, what we're trying to do here is we are trying to deserialize an API. So there's a lot of information. Okay, so there we go. So I've done them all. Okay, there they are. I've kind of renamed them all so that they're friendly names as opposed to M underscore for these ones too. These ones are okay. Another way to do this is to use the setters instead of using the direct access when I create my constructor. It's up to you. But what I want to do is grab all this now, and I want to, when I make a movie, an empty movie, I want to make all these kind of initialized with kind of nothing. So kind of an empty string. And this way they've been initialized even if I'm using the default constructor, which is the empty constructor. So this is the default constructor function, which is just going to make everything, at least it'll initialize everything to an empty string, okay, when I use it. And those are the two constructors that I have right now, okay? So I have the two constructors, and the last thing I want to do is I want to have some overloaded or overridden methods, and I want to use @override. And if I was to use the @override, by the way, there's a couple of ways of using the @override. I can right-click and I can go to generate, and instead of me doing it myself, I can just do overridden methods, and it'll actually allow me to select any of the ones I want to override. I want to override the toString method, so I just double click onto it, and then there we go. There's our overridden toString method. And I want to override the toString method to make it easy for me to to show my movie when I'm doing it. So what I want to do here is, I know this is tedious again, but there's two ways to do this. I could make it so I want to show off my title, year, rated, released, all those things again. And I want to be able to print out the stuff so when we do our when we're doing any kind of troubleshooting, we can see if we're getting the information that's coming right from the database. So here, what I want to do is I'm going to say, I could return I can use string format for this, and I can start thinking about what my format is going to look like. Remember, format allows me to do things like %s, so that's the string, and then I could kind of add more things here, like, for example, title, %s, and then in here I would put the title, which is get title. So I could do that, right? That would be something I can do, string format. And what I want to do is %n would be a new line, if I'm not wrong, right? That's kind of a new line character. So that's something we can do. We can do a new line character followed by the next thing, which is going to be the year, right? Space and %s for the year. So we'll say get year, and let's put them all in there. So get year, get rated, get released. It's right here on the top here. Get runtime, and get genre. We'll put all the getting stuff at the bottom over here so you can see them. Get genre, get director. There's director. Get writers. Let's put them here. Here. Get writers. Get actors. Get plot. Get poster. Get IMDb, and get type. right? So those are all the ones. And now, of course, we need to actually make it work properly with this one long string. So the way, if we did it, was %n, and then the name, the next thing that's in. So that's rated, and then %s, and then %n. New line again. We're going to kind of put it in a thing, and then released, and then runtime, and then genre, and then followed by, let me see, released, it should be released, runtime, genre. Again, it's a little bit tedious, but it is what it is. We can also do plus 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 if you like that method too, when you concatenate everything together. It's truly up to you how you do it and what makes you feel comfortable. But this is kind of, using a formatter, which isn't a terrible thing to do. After actors comes plot, I think. Followed by poster, followed by IMDb, IMDb ID, followed by type. Is that how it is? Or is it the other way around? Writers, get plot, oh, yeah, this is wrong. This should be type. Type. There we go. Type is the last one. So poster, IMDb ID, poster, IMDb ID, and type. Okay, good. Whew, right? I told you the movie method, kind of our model would take a long time. Let's put this up on GitHub so you can have a worst case scenario. So again, I'm going to terminal. I'm going to do git commit -m. And I'll say added movie model class. Git push. So again, if you ever wanted to check that, we can always go to here. And if I go into source main Java, you can see here's the movie class that we have right here. This is everything that I just did. So worst case scenario, you can always go here and take a look. And if this is wrong, we'll know soon because I'm going to test it, right now, pretty much. All right. So that is the first thing. So the first thing is I made my model class. I think it's right. I think the toString method is right, but I can't really test it yet until I have some kind of API controller or API manager is what I like to say, in order for me to be able to read from the API. Okay, so that's what I will be able to do next. Okay, before I move on though, I want to check with you guys. Are you with me? Check mark, or if instead of a check mark, maybe you want to respond with a thumbs up. Okay, Giovanni's good. You can always put in something in the chat. There's not a lot of you today. Let me know if you guys are good. So I don't want to move on and then move away from you guys, and then you guys are way behind. That would not be good. Okay, so that is this piece. And I'll come back to that in a second. I'm just also going to check here on YouTube to make sure things are good. All right, so we've kind of started doing our model class, and what we want to do is we want to use some additional tools to connect to our API. And what we're going to do here is when we create our API manager, we're going to use the Java HTTP client in order for us to connect to our to the API online. We need another package for this. And in order for us to use it, we're going to have to add additional requirements inside of our module info.java. So under module info.java, what we need to do is we need some additional requirements. And the requirements we need are, please type this in, requires, and it's going to be java.net .http. Okay, that's what we need. So java.net.http is required, again, in our module info Java. Okay, and that'll give us the model classes we need, the module we need in order for us to connect to a web API. All right, it's this part right here. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. So we're going to, what this comes with, HTTP client is what we're going to be using. It comes with 3 classes. The HTTP client class itself, which is going to be us creating a client object, a request object, which really describes the result of the HTTP request, what happens to it, and the HTTP response, which is what we're going to get back from the server. Okay, so those 2 things. And the way we would use them is we're going to make a string that's going to look like this, a URL string that looks like this. Okay, here's an example. And we're going to use our HTTP client to create a new HTTP client object. And we're going to use what almost looks like a stream to create and build our request. Once we've done our request, we're going to kind of create a response by using our client to send the request object that we create. And we're going to use our HTTP response body handlers and convert everything to a string that's going to return everything into the response object. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be using this methodology, right? And it's not too terrible. Once we have the response object, then it's a simple matter of making a new JSON object. And what we want to do is we want to use from JSON, the from JSON method call that we used last time, right, last week. And we're going to take our response body and convert it to a movie class. That's exactly what we're going to do in this order, okay? So this is the same steps you're going to take when you make your own API call when I'm going to give you your assignment coming up. The exact same process. And the same thing most likely for the final test, that if we're going to connect to any kind of API, this is the way we're going to do it in this order, okay? So first thing first, we've added our client and we want to create a URL string, but it'd be nice if we had some kind of manager, some kind of singleton that we can access to help us out. Back to this. So I'm going to make a brand new Java class and we'll call this Java class the API Manager class. The API Manager class is going to be a singleton, okay? So we've done singletons in the past, and we have a template for this in Scene Manager. Scene Manager is a singleton. Notice we have this little singleton block. I'm just going to save time, I'm going to copy this part from the Scene Manager, the singleton block here. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go back to the API Manager and paste it in. And notice that it's incorrect right now because it's not Scene Manager, but rather API Manager that we need to rename all of these things, okay? And then now we have API Manager as a singleton right now. Okay, remember a singleton, what it is? We go through its instance method, and the instance method provides a gateway to the entire class as opposed to using a static class. This is a way better way of doing it than using statics, okay? Next, what we want to do is inside of our API Manager, we want to define a couple of API calls, method calls, okay? So one of them that I recommend we use is something like, I want to search by, I want to do a regular search term, okay? I want to use a search term like Dune. And then it's going to pull up all the movies that I want to get and so on. That's one of them. The other one is, what if I want to search by title and year? I should get, using both those terms, one single movie that I'm going to get. Okay, module info. Sure, here's my module info. Are you good with this, Dia? So I want to get a single movie, right, with, hopefully you got that, that I'm going to use in my API manager. No problem. So the movie is going to have all this stuff, and my API manager is going to pull that information into it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a new public method. It's going to return a movie, and I'm going to call it get movie from OMDB by really long name, by title and year. Yay! Really long movie name, long thing. It's going to take two properties, parameters. One is going to be the title of the movie, and the other one is going to be the year of the movie, when it was kind of created or released. I'm going to start off by constructing my my URL. Okay, I'm going to construct my URL. And what it's going to look like is, it's going to look like this. I'm going to say, I'm going to take a string. I'm going to call this the API key. I'm going to populate my API key that I gave you before. So I'm just going to go and grab that right now. So again, please, just like Dia just did, if I'm going too fast for you, slow me down. So this is my API key. This way, if you want to, you can replace my API key with yours, all right? If you follow this method that I'm going to do right now. Okay, first things first. Next, I'm going to get a string, another string, which I'm going to call the URL. And the URL string is going to be, just like we've done before, HTTPS, so that's secure surfing, www.omdbapi.com/. So that is the URL. Okay, so I'm constructing my call right now. And for the URI, right, the URI itself is the URL along with the search criteria, right? So now I know, here's what I know. If I call it URI, what I'm really looking for is the java.net URI is something that I'm going to access as well, which may clash with my local name URI, right? So again, a couple of ways to do that. I could construct everything right here where I say, okay, it's my URL, you know, and I have a search like API key, right, equals, and then I add in my API key, this one, right? And then after my API key, I'm going to have my search terms. And my search terms are going to be the title and the year. Okay, so search terms is what I'm going to make. So let's put a couple of things here. So string, we'll say the title. We can actually redo the title. We can say the title, right, is equal to whatever the title is, right? And what I can do is I can take that title and I can encode it with plus +T, right? I could do that, right? So, and that's what it really is. I'm going to say &T, that's the way we would do it. And then plus the title. So I could certainly do that, right? I could certainly do this. There's going to be an issue if I was to do something like this, if I was going to encode it this way. I could take this piece right here and add it in right here directly. So really what I'm doing is I'm constructing the API call right here. This is what I'm doing, okay? I'll come back to this title thing in a second and why I didn't decide to do that. And then as well as I can add in &y for the year, right? Followed by, and I'm also missing an equals. It's got to be like this. Title equals and year equals, and then plus the year. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. That's the URL right there. Okay, does that make sense? So the API key followed by the title by the year. kind of putting all that together. Nice. And that's the first bit. The first bit is this, getting my URL correctly. The next part is I want to construct my URI. And the way I'm going to do that is first I'm going to call HTTP client, right? And I'm going to make a new client object, right? Alt enter will add my HTTP client object in. That means I'm going to use the HTTP client, and I want to make, so I'm going to say HTTP client, and I want to use the new HTTP client object, which is kind of like a factory pattern. So what this does is it says, instead of using the new keyword here, I'm going to use the factory. This is a factory method pattern that constructs my client for me in the correct way. So it's a convenience method, that what it does, and returns a new HTTP client here, and that's what it does. It's a factory method to create one, okay? Next, once I have my client, I'm going to construct my request. So my request object is the next thing I want. I'm going to call this the HTTP request, which is going to be equal to the HTTP request dot, and then just like we've done before, like I showed you, new builder, right? Dot URI, and then I'm going to pass in the URI itself, which is from java.net dot create, and I'm going to pass in the URL information that I just created up there the URL itself, sorry, and then dot build. There we go. So that creates it right there. That's that single line, and that comes right from here. That comes right from here. This is where it is, right here. Okay. So again, this is kind of step one is kind of create add your API or construct your URL. So this is like step one, construct your URL. All right, this part. Right, step two is create a client object, right? Step three, create a request object. And this request object is going to be passed to the server, right, through java.net. That's what it does. So that's like kind of the steps we're going to take. And once we've done the request object, right, we need to do a try catch. And this is where we could get errors, right? What if the request object is incomplete? What if I put the wrong stuff in? I always want to do a try catch. So if I do a try catch, then what it's going to be is, let's just put a catch down here. And we'll use an exception. We'll call it exception. And we want to do an exception dot print stack trace if there's an issue. And at the bottom, if we get to this point here, I'm going to return null. Because basically, if I can get all the way down here, I didn't do what I'm supposed to do in my try block. Okay, so this is step 4 now. So step 4, once I do that, and I'm into this part right here, I want to create a response object. So the response object is going to be the thing that I'm going to get from the server. So this is something that I'm constructing. I haven't sent it to my server yet. Okay, I've just built the request, right? The response object is going to be, I'm going to use my client to send the request, and whatever I get back from the server is going to be stored in the response. All right, so it's going to be HTTP response of type string. That's what I want, string response, which we're going to call response. And what we're going to say is we're going to take the client object and we're going to send the request. We're going to send the HTTP request out, and we're going to use the body handler, the HTTP response dot body handler, body handlers, the body handlers dot of string, and that kind of converts it to a string. And it's a pretty long statement. It kind of looks like this, but I want you guys to see the whole thing. So this is constructing the response object, or creating a response object. The response object will not be created if when I use the send method of the client object, right? Because the client object is an HTTP client, okay? If you look at it, the HTTP client can be used to send requests and retrieve the responses, right? That's what it does. It's created through a builder. When I think about a builder, I'm thinking about some kind of factory method pattern that I'm using, right? And the body handler must be supplied for each HTTP request sent. So that's what it says. The send method, which is this one, right? The send method sends the given request using the client, blocking if necessary to get the response, and the returned HTTP response of type T, in this case of type string, contains the response status, headers, and body as handled by the given response body handler, right? So that's what it does. So it's going to convert it to a string, and it's going to save it here to the response object, okay? Nice. So that is step 4. We get the response object back. Hopefully it's full with something we can use. Then step 5, we're going to use JSON, we're going to construct or create a JSON object. So we've done this before last week. We're going to say, hey, JSON, I want to make a new object. Right, here's a new JSON object there, right there. And then what I'm going to do is, once I make a new JSON object, I'm going to deserialize step 6, right, which is deserialize the data using the from JSON method, right? So we're going to say return JSON dot from JSON, and we're going to pass in the response dot body object, which is a string, and we're going to convert it to a movie dot class. So this will reserialize it or kind of convert it into a movie object, right, and return it out here from the file, from the function. Whew, and that's it. I mean, I've added extra comments here, so it looks like it's a lot longer than it is. But for the most part, what I've shown you here is exactly what's in the PowerPoint right here. Okay, so that's the exact steps. So again, we first do this part, we construct those two things, we make a response, and then we use JSON to convert it from JSON into a movie. But instead of returning it and storing it here, we're going to return it out here, from this thing right here. Get movie from OMDB by title and year. Okay, save. And I'm going to put this up on GitHub so you guys have it. So git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added API manager v1, because we're going to make other ones too. Git push. What other methods is what I mean. All right, so we made it, but we never tested it. We've never tested it. Yours is showing for body handlers, errors for body handlers. Okay, interesting. So at the top, the imports that I have are these right now. Okay, those are the imports. I find that if I have these imports, then you shouldn't show any errors. So maybe what would be helpful is if you just use these imports from the get-go DIA, and you should be okay with just kind of typing this all in. You have them already, and it's still showing an error. Make sure everything is spelled properly. Body handlers of string, and what I'll do is just to help you, this is what mine looks like. I'll copy it into the chat and make sure that you have what I have. So it should be pretty much the same. Okay, questions around this part so far? How do we test it? Well, we don't have a UI, and I'm not going to have a UI yet, again, and we'll take a short break in a second. But what I want to do is I want to be able to test this API manager out. And the way to do that is let's do it in main. So I'm going to go back to main, And we kind of did these little tests before. So in main, I'm just going to before I do anything, I'm going to scroll, kind of add a few spaces here at the top. And I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say, hey, API manager, I want to go through the instance method and I want to call get movie from OMDB by title and year. And I'm going to pass in the title, which is going to be called Dune. And I want to pass in the year, which I know is 2021. Okay. And because I'm specifically asking for a movie by title and year. Okay. And of course, what this is going to return is a movie. So var movie is equal to this. And you can see that I'm getting a movie object back from, by using my method get movie from OMDB by title and year. So I'm getting a movie back. And because movie has a toString method, I should be able to just do system.out.println and output the movie that, kind of to the console if I did everything correctly. And with these two lines, if you press run, then if we did everything correctly and if I type stuff good and I didn't make any errors, we should get not this. How about that? We should not get this. So let's see what we get here and why we have a problem, if there's anything. So, okay, exception in application start method. So that's where the issue is, right? And it says a couple things. It says our JavaFX application launcher with args. Did I mess things up with that? Java fxml requires, I got my java.net HTTP. Let me take a look at my notes really quickly. Json. I think so. I don't think it's this. I think this is good. All right. Well, then it's probably the way I formed up my request somehow. All right. So let me take a look at that and see if I messed up in some other way. Okay. So I'll do that next. So let's go. So let's keep reading the issue. It says it's a reflection error, right? So it says invocation target exception is what the exception is. And it's an exception that's happening in main here. So in my main, it's calling the API manager, going through the instance method, getting my movie from OMDB title and year, passing in Dune in 2021, and then system.out.println movie, and I think I have a movie.toString. That might be it. What if I just said movie. Let's just get something like specific movie.title. And I want to just test this out first because maybe it's my toString method that's a problem. And run it. And no. Okay, so it's not the method. It's something that I did, something else I did. Okay, let's take a look here. So launch application. All right, so it says caused by Java malformed escape pair at this. Okay, this is interesting. So this is where the issue is. It says Dune and T%Y. Oh, there it is. So if I go back to my API manager, I use percent and it should have been ampersand. Haha. I'll be okay. There we go. And that means that I should be able to go back to main and I should be able to output the movie itself. Let's go back to this and press play. Hey, look at that. It worked. And we have some pretty cool stuff here. It got Dune 2021, PG-13. It actually did everything I wanted. Directors, writers. Well, writers it didn't do, okay? And it did actors, but not writers. Why not? Why didn't it get writers? It got everything except for writers. That's weird, isn't it? Denis Villeneuve is a director, but it didn't get writers in my output. So let's go and take a look here. Did I miss it? Get title, get year, get rating, get release, get runtime, get genre, get director, get writers, get actors, get plot, get poster, get IMDb, and so on. What did I do wrong? So it's up here somewhere in my method. Get actors, get writers, of type writers, set writers, string writers, writers. Okay, and what did I call it up here? Did I make it wrong? Writers. Huh. M writers. Well, way to check this would be actually just to output writers instead of everything. So if I went here and I said movie dot writers, get writers, that should output my writers. Let me just check, see if I'm right. It does not. Huh. And what does the writers, this is where you check your data. And writers for Dune are, the serialized name should be writer without S. Should it? Writer. Haha, look at that, eh? Isn't that awesome? Thank you for that. I knew there was some problem. Something, I was just going to check that just now. So writer is what it is, not writers. Writers is for us because there's more than one writer. It could be many writers, but for the serialized field, it's got to be writer. So that's it. Save and play, and I think we should be good to go. Thank you, Giovanni. There it is, John Spates and so on. So we can get all the details. And again, this is it's what we need to do is check all this before any UI, because if we do the UI, there's too much to check at once. Is it the UI problem? You know, what is the problem? And so this one, it kind of reduces the noise in order for me to be able to do this here. Okay, so it's not bad. Take a look at that, right? It gives me all the details I want. And if I click on the poster, we should see the poster, which is what this looks like. Cool. So that's good. Okay. Okay, so now going back to you, are you with me? So if you're with me, again, a thumbs up would be good, or a yes, I'm with you on the chat, or anything. How are we doing there? I'm just going to put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to say git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say tested, you know, our API manager in main. And it works. Okay. Okay, so before we stop, because I want to take a short break now, we did the first API read from the database. Now I'm going to come back to you. Thoughts. What are your thoughts? And again, anyone can speak up here. Easy, hard, convoluted. What are your thoughts here in terms of the way it works? So, I mean, again, this is a pretty big API, right? And what I mean by that is it's not that big, but it's big enough so that my model class, my movie, look, I even made a mistake even when I was careful. I mean, I was going through it pretty quick, but you can see that, you know, when I went through it, there's quite a few fields, right, that we have to go through. And these are all serialized names. And these names have to match with the fields that we see here. So that's why I checked it. This makes sense, right? And with all of these fields that we're getting, there's some things that I've ignored. I've ignored ratings, but it's okay, because if my class, my model class, doesn't include something, it's just discarded. Same thing with Metascore and IMDb rating and a bunch of other stuff, all right? So all this stuff is, you know, anything that I'm not using is discarded. But meanwhile, we got some data, which is the main thing. The main thing is we got data, okay? And we're able to get data, and it kind of outputs everything to the console, which is good. It's a good test, and we're doing it before any kind of user interface. Okay. Any questions before we go on a short break? Let's take 10, and when we come back, it'll be roughly 7:50, and we'll end off with a couple of additional methods in the API manager, and maybe we'll start our user interface today, and we should finish everything off next week, worst case scenario. If we can do a lot today, I will, but there's a lot to do. All right, so let's take a short break. Again, 10 minutes. So right now we're sitting at 7:40. We'll be back, right? So we'll be on break, and we'll say on break, back at 7:50. Okay, hopefully that'll be good. I'll give you a chance to go and do your stuff. Yes, I will. 1 sec, and I'll do all that for you. I know there's a lot here, and one thing whenever I think about doing this kind of stuff, I always kind of keep you in mind, and type. Okay, type. Which part of the model class do you want to see? I'm going to just stop recording on YouTube for now.